Chapter 7 Life in a Test Tube. People who believe the theory of evolution think that life began billions of years ago, as certain chemicals happened to mix together under just the right conditions. Scientists have conducted experiments that imitate those conditions. No one has come close to making life. What would have had to happen to make life? And what are the chances that life could come from any mix of non-living matter? For hundreds of years, people believed that living things came from non-living things. They thought spoiled meat turned into white worms. They thought mud turned into frogs and old rags became rats. Then a man named Francesco Redi conducted an experiment to test that theory. He put meat into 2 jars. One of the jars was covered with fine cloth, and the other jar was left open. Only the meat in the open jar developed white worms. Redi repeated the experiment and found the same thing happened. Then he noticed that the meat in the open jar had flies crawling over it, but there were no flies on the meat in the covered jar. Redi studied the flies carefully and realized that they were laying eggs on the spoiled meat. The white worms came from the eggs and in time grew into flies. Other early scientists conducted other careful experiments and came to an important conclusion. Life can only come from other life. In the world as we know it today, there is no way that life can simply start up on its own, coming from non-living matter. Scientists agree that life only comes from living things in today's world. Yet the theory of evolution insists that millions of years ago, life sprang from non-living chemicals. One famous scientist, Dr. Robert Jastrow, says there are only 2 choices. Either life was created on the earth by the will of a being outside the grasp of scientific understanding, God, or it evolved on our planet spontaneously through chemical reactions occurring in non-living matter lying on the surface of the planet. This makes our choice very simple. We must either believe that life just happened, or else believe that God created life. If we can show that life could not happen through chemical reactions occurring in non-living matter lying on the surface of our planet, then we can conclude that God must have created life. What do evolutionists think happened? Scientists who believe the theory of evolution know life could not have happened unless Earth was once very different than it is now. They picture early Earth as molten rock, giving off volcanic gases like methane, carbon dioxide, ammonia, and water vapor. Some think thousands of meteorites struck Earth from space, bringing millions of tons of carbon. Perhaps water vapor was formed by gases from volcanoes. They suppose that after hundreds of millions of years, Earth cooled. Rain fell on the black, jumbled, empty rocks of Earth. Finally, water lay in shallow seas and in millions of pools and streams. They also suppose there was no free oxygen in the air then, and therefore no ozone layer. Powerful rays of ultraviolet light from the sun struck the water and the chemicals that were dissolved in it and caused change. No scientist can say just how it is supposed to have happened, but evolutionists think that carbon and ammonia and other atoms began to link up to form the chemical combinations necessary for living cells. Then, somehow, these chemicals formed more complex structures. Finally, somehow, just the right chemicals were all together in the right place and a living cell formed. This living cell reproduced itself from the chemicals in the water around it, and from this beginning, a single cell, all the plants and animals on Earth developed. Stanley Miller's experiment. In 1953, a college science student named Stanley Miller decided to conduct an experiment. He designed a system of glass tubes and bottles to reproduce conditions evolutionists thought once existed on Earth. He put water and gases into his invention. He heated the liquid and used electric sparks, instead of ultraviolet rays to jolt the chemicals. What happened seemed exciting. His experiment actually produced some of the amino acids and other simple compounds found in living things. The newspapers reported that Miller had nearly made life in a test tube. But while amino acids are found in living things, they are only building blocks. Amino acids are not alive. It's as if a person found 3 or 4 bricks in the backyard, and the newspaper headline read, "Local man engineers 50-story skyscraper." There's a long way to go from having building blocks to having a completed building. Miller's experiment did make some of the 29 amino acids found in proteins, but this does not mean he showed how living things began. How do we know? First, all the right amino acids are found in dead bodies, but the bodies are still dead. Just having the right amino acids doesn't make something alive. Second, not all the amino acids needed by living things were formed in Miller's experiment. At least 3 key amino acids were absent. Third, many acids harmful to the development of life are formed in experiments like Miller's. These experiments produce what one evolutionist scientist calls hopelessly complex gunks. The chemicals in the gunks would have kept life from developing, not helped it develop. So Miller's experiment did not create life in a test tube. It did not even come close to making a single living cell. Such experiments have shown just how unbelievable the notion of the chemical evolution of life really is. What is in a cell? How complex is a single cell? One scientist who believes in evolution, J. Ch, says that the simplest cell is an intricate unit of harmoniously coordinated parts and chemical pathways. Its spontaneous assembly out of the environment, granting the unlikely simultaneous presence together of all the parts, is not a believable possibility. Even so, Ch and other evolutionists believe that somehow that single cell did form spontaneously. But why is the forming of a single cell so unbelievable? It's unbelievable partly because there are so many different kinds of chemicals in living cells. Amino acids. Some 29 different kinds of amino acids are needed for the protein in living cells. Even after 30 years of experiments, 3 key amino acids have not been made chemically, even in experiments especially designed to produce them. Also, the way some amino acids must be made in the test tube, using heat, gases, electricity, or ultraviolet rays, will destroy other amino acids. Many are destroyed by heat. Others are broken down by oxygen or by other acids. Even if Earth had ever been as evolutionists imagine, the amino acids that might have formed then would quickly have been destroyed. Without the protection provided by being in a living cell, amino acids could never have come together to evolve further. Lipids. These are complex organic compounds found only in living organisms and make up about 10% of the simplest cells. Some are essential fatty acids that cannot even be produced in the body from other compounds, but must come from eating proteins that already contain them. Porphyrin. This is an important molecule in hemoglobin, the element in red blood cells that carries oxygen. Evolutionists realized that there must have been porphyrins for life to survive. Without porphyrins, oxygen breaks down the other chemicals in a cell, but porphyrin-like chemicals can only be made when there is free oxygen available. If amino acids can only be made when there is no free oxygen in the atmosphere, and porphyrins can only be made when there is free oxygen, then these things needed by every cell could not have existed together to form the first cell. What's more, many of these compounds are antagonistic. They will combine and destroy each other anywhere except within a living cell. Polynucleotides. These complex chemicals are found in DNA and RNA, linked together in groups of as many as 4,500 units. DNA is the code that cells use to reproduce the proteins of which cells are composed. That code also tells the cells how to make more DNA. What does this mean? Simply that to make DNA, you have to have DNA in the first place. You have to have the DNA code within the cell before you can make more DNA code. Without the complete code in the first place, there is no way to make the code necessary for every living cell. There are many more elements found in living cells that we could look at, but we really don't need to list them. The more scientists learn about cells, the more complex and special they appear to be. No one who studies the living cell can explain how life could begin from non-living things. In fact, the more scientists learn, the clearer it is that life from non-living chemicals simply could not just happen. How do we know it couldn't just happen? People who still believe in the theory of evolution say that given enough time, anything can happen. They think the Earth is billions of years old, and that billions of years is enough time. Besides, no matter how unlikely the chance beginning of life may seem, life did begin. And since these evolutionists do not believe in God, they are sure it must have just happened. Is there any way to tell if something can happen by chance? Some mathematicians work with what is called probability theory. Using probability theory, it is possible to tell just how likely it is for something to happen. For instance, if you've ever looked at contest forms, you may have read something like this: your chance of winning the grand prize in this contest is 1 in 329,807,000. That means if the same contest were run over 329 million times, you'd probably win once. Someone will win the contest you enter, but the chances are very, very small that the winner will be you. Probability theory can tell you how many other things too. Suppose you take 10 coins and flip each of them. How many do you suppose will turn up tails? If you flip the 10 coins enough times, say 1,000 times each, probability theory tells us that about half the flips will turn up heads and half will turn up tails. How many times would you have to flip the coins for all 10 to turn up heads at the same time? Probability theory tells you how to find out. Multiply 10 times 9 times 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. What does that work out to? To have all 10 coins turn up heads at the same time, you would need to flip the coins an average of 4,132,800 times. How long would that take you? Well, if you flipped all 10 coins twice each minute and worked 10 hours a day every day, it would take you almost 10 years of coin flipping to be sure that all 10 would turn up heads just once. Of course, if you were to place the coins heads up on purpose, it wouldn't take you long at all. Whenever we have a number of things that need to happen at the same time, we can use probability theory to find out how likely it is they will happen together by chance. Proteins are long, slender threads 500 times too thin to be seen under even a good microscope. They are made up of chains of amino acids. There are between 150,000 different amino acid links in each protein chain. There are an average of at least 400 amino acid links in the smallest known living things. Each of these amino acids is made up of different atoms attached to one side of another atom. Each different amino acid has a different side group, and all the amino acids in living things have their side group on the left side. Yet when scientists make amino acids in their laboratories, half the acids produced are right-handed. So if the amino acids form by chance, half of them are right-handed and half are left-handed. What if we use probability theory to find out how likely it is that the smallest possible living thing would just happen to have only left-handed amino acids? Well, there is 1 chance in 10, followed by 123 zeros. A professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology has estimated that all the protein molecules that have ever existed on Earth is only 10 followed by 52 zeros. That means there is no real chance at all that even one protein with all left-handed amino acids could ever have just happened to come into existence. There are other things that are special about the proteins in living creatures. The average protein in the smallest known living thing has about 400 amino acid links, and each amino acid link must be in the right order. It is something like the alphabet. To make words, the letters in the alphabet must be in a particular order. If the letters in letter are out of order, as T-E-E-R-T-L, those letters don't make a meaningful word. In even small proteins, about 400 amino acid links or letters have to be in just the right order, or the protein does not work. What is the probability of an amino acid chain 400 units long happening by chance? The answer is 1 chance in 10, followed by 240 zeros. One mathematician figured that even if chemicals combined 150,000 million times faster than they do in living things, and used all the chemical atoms on Earth, there would be only 1 chance in 10 followed by 161 zeros that a single usable protein could have been produced by chance in the history of the Earth. But living cells have more than proteins. They also contain DNA, that code necessary for living things to reproduce. If all the atoms in the universe were made into the chemicals from which DNA is formed, and they were put together again and again at 8 trillion chains a second, would it be possible to have a single DNA gene, a code carrier, come about by chance? Only if we have 10, followed by 147 zeros, years. How long is that? Another mathematician imagined a tiny snail moving so slowly that it took 3,810 followed by 15 zeros years to travel 1 inch. If the snail carried one atom across the 30 billion light years of our universe, it would take him about 4 times 10 followed by 125 zeros years to produce the gene. The mathematician explains. In this leisurely fashion, the little space crawler would have time to carry 2 times 10 followed by 21 zeros complete universes, one atom at a time, all the way across the 30 billion years of the assumed diameter of the cosmos, during the time that chance could be expected to arrange one gene in any usable order, trying at the unbelievable speed noted earlier, using all the atoms of the universe. Dr. James F. Coppedge, then director of the Center for Probability Research and Biology in California, explains these probabilities in his book, Evolution, Possible or Impossible? Possible or impossible? The answer is clear. Life simply could not have come about by chance. No matter how much time the evolutionist thinks passed from Earth's beginning until life evolved, it could not have happened. Since life could not have begun by chance, it must have been purposely created by God. There is no other choice. If one of only 2 possible choices could not have happened, the other one did. So never let anyone convince you that it's foolish or unscientific to believe in God. The fact is, the evidence shows that it is foolish not to believe in God. The evidence truly is on our side.